crafts with the local craftspeople, and they wanted to bring them in. And this was a very important example for me, I think, of how you can look back at the great wealth of heritage that we have, but how you can use it and twist it, literally in this case, into something which benefits future generations. So, right at the heart of this programme was it wasn't just about the arts, it was about the crafts, and it wasn't just about studios or museums, it was about live craftspeople making manufacturing things which we were helping them to market through a marketing cooperative. So we were not trying to look just at the physical, we were trying to look at the people and trying to find out what it was that was inhibiting them from succeeding, which in the case of the craftspeople was actually getting out there internationally. So we actually helped them, for example, to go to international trade fairs to show what they were doing. There was, of course, as you'll have no doubt deduced, a big emphasis on the arts. But we broadened this out from the visual arts, which was really at the core of the programme, into the performing arts as well, and beyond circus into other programmes. So English National Opera moved into the area, their rehearsal spaces and studios, and engaged with the local community, for example. So what we were trying to look for was as broad a platform as possible for arts and for crafts. And of course, venues and workspaces became very important. Working with entrepreneurs like Glasshouse, though, it wasn't just about putting artists into studios, which, as we've heard, doesn't do much for the rent. It was actually about putting them in the same buildings as the IT specialists we were talking about earlier, to try and encourage some cross-fertilisation, some of which did happen. But also about reflecting local traditions. I'm not quite sure why Brick Lane Music Hall moved from Brick Lane to Curtain Road, but we were very pleased to have them. So there was opportunities taken because we were helping, particularly with finance actually, to enable people to improve the facilities they had, to expand and grow their creative talents. And very importantly for us as the staff, but also for everybody else, was the idea that we were also supporting a network of places to go which weren't just about work. It was actually about getting out there and enjoying yourself. It was about people networking in places like the Cantaloupe restaurant down on the bottom right there, and the Blue Note Jazz Club. Now, this became one of the core issues locally. And after, City Challenge was a 5-year programme. After I left, the Blue Note lost its licence. The local authority twisted around and said, no, we don't want all these people coming in and queuing up to go to this very trendy jazz club, because the local residents said they didn't want it. And this brings me on to, if you like, the theme of what I wanted to talk about, which is about how in London we embed creative industries into our communities, and how much we've learnt about that and how much we've got to learn as we go forward. So it was an amazing time for us, and we delivered more than we were asked to deliver by the government and the local authority. But there are some things to be learnt, and I think the first thing to be learnt, you remember the red line that was drawn around the map at the start of this presentation. Our boundaries were very rigid. We couldn't actually even, for example, invest in the music hall in Hoxton Street, a very, very long tradition of music hall in Hoxton Street, because the government said you may not spend money across that red line. So, and that's not surprising, perhaps, that local people felt excluded. They also felt excluded politically, because Hoxton voted Liberal, and the people who set up the City Challenge voted Labour. And there was a huge amount of political contention around the boundary. And oddly enough, strangely, the council had drawn the boundary for the City Challenge area exactly where that split happened. The second issue was about investing in local people. We invested a lot in training and development for local people, but we were creating 1,000 jobs a year in that area, and that went on after we'd finished, but local unemployment didn't fall. So clearly something wasn't marrying up, something wasn't matching. And if this is about creating jobs for people in London, then we have to think very hard about how we actually do that, I think. Property prices rose. This building here is the Lux Cinema. Some of you may remember it. It wasn't the Lux for very long. It ran out of Lux when the landlord, who was a property entrepreneur, put the rent up, and the British Film Institute couldn't stay there anymore. So this is actually London's first ever digital arts gallery. It didn't live very long at all because they couldn't pay the rent. And many artists have complained subsequently, and studies have been done to show that we failed because property prices rose. And it's very arguable whether that's actually a failure or a success. It's an interesting question, isn't it? Other people have done it differently. I'll come back to that in a moment. But actually, it is true that it was the wealthier artists who stayed in the area. Obviously, I would believe very strongly in working in partnership with your customers and with your community. I also would like to appeal to people not to write rules that stop things from happening. I've mentioned some of those already. Quite often in our case, bureaucracy got in the way of doing the sensible thing, but it also got in the way of innovation. And I do recommend having awesome amounts of fun. Now, just to conclude, the heading at the top of this slide is a T-shirt produced locally, although I think all the 3 missing letters were present. Now, actually, for me, knowing Notting Hill before it became Notting Hill, and was Notting Hill of old, that's a really ironic T-shirt. But it wasn't meant ironically. It was literally meant that we don't want you around here. We don't want people who go around painted blue with no clothes on in this area. We don't want, there's a particular person, actually, who used to go around wearing only an octopus, driving around in a pink armoured car from the fetish club. They were unwelcome, as were the people queuing at the Blue Note jazz club. Because they were outsiders. So we were followed by the Shoreditch New Deal for Communities, which was called Shoreditch Our Way, because it was the local community saying, we don't want this. And in fact, they even on their website used to say, we don't want these strange artists coming in here. But they have moved on from that. And they created the Shoreditch Trust. I think very interesting idea, the Shoreditch Trust, which is you actually take property assets into the ownership of the local community, and they then rent those out and they reap the benefits from it. And they keep the rents at affordable levels. One of the things they do, of course, is they let out artist studios. So in fact, actually, things have come full circle. And they run local festivals. They're not quite the same as Joshua Compston's festivals because they don't include coffins, but people are dancing in Hoxton Square again. So nevertheless, the contention remains about what we did. So I guess my questions are, can you pin creativity down into a place? Is that possible? And who's the creativity for, actually? Is it just for the creatives? Is it for the trendy people from Notting Hill who should F off back there? Or is it for the local communities in London? And also, can you be radical and at the same time local? Can you get away with wearing an octopus in Hoxton? Thank you very much.